Welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education Series. Today's session is on the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship, Preparing as an Undergrad, and our speaker is Dr. Matthew Plooster. Today's event is virtual and is being recorded, so please mute yourself and turn off your camera to ensure the best experience. If you have any questions, use the chat feature or unmute yourself when you are invited by the speaker. And here is a QR code to our event evaluation form. We would love for everyone to fill that out, but we specifically need the Europe and the Spur scholars to complete that in order to get credit for attending this event. And I'd like to share that the mission of the University of Utah Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research and creative works in all disciplines throughout the University of Utah campus. In recognition that excellence requires diversity, we pursue this mission through equitable programming that promotes diverse representation and social justice. And we acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And today, our speaker is Dr. Matthew Plooster. He's the Director of Student Services for the Graduate School. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Plooster.
Thank you, Shelley, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure to join the Office of Undergraduate Research to help as you prepare for graduate school, especially through a research lens, and how to find funding to do so. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Matthew Plooster with the Graduate School. I oversee the student funding arm of the graduate school, so the tuition benefit program, fellowships, awards, health insurance, that's my area. Today, we're going to talk about the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, or GRFP for short, and how you can prepare as an undergrad. So we're going to go over, well, let's change my slide. We're going to go over just what exactly is the GRFP, what is the eligibility requirements, the different application components, various pieces of advice, how to get started, what you can do now as an undergrad, some frequently asked questions that may be questions that you have, so we may be answering that on a slide, and then we'll go over some resources and some toolbox items here, and throughout the presentation, Shelley will be sharing with you a series of documents and PDFs that can be helpful for you as you pursue this opportunity. So diving right in, what is the NSF GRFP? Well, this is one of the oldest forms of federally funded student financial aid. It's older than federal loans, older than Pell Grants, older than the GI Bill. It is designed to ensure the vitality of the human resource base of science and engineering in the United States and reinforce its diversity. Diversity of scientists and engineers, diversity in the disciplines, diversity in the type of research that is being conducted. As the oldest graduate fellowship of its kind, the GRFP has a long history of selecting recipients who achieve high levels of success in their future academic and professional careers and become lifelong leaders that contribute significantly to both scientific innovation and teaching. So many people who were GRFPs, as mentioned here, there's a correlation between high levels of success here. So a number of people who have the GRFP, they go on to be all-star researchers, college deans, university presidents, think tank leaders, nonprofit leaders. About 42 or 43 Nobel laureates were previously GRFPs, as well as presidential cabinet members, corporate leaders, among others. So there definitely is a correlation here between being a GRFP today and a leader tomorrow. The fellowship does come with a number of benefits here. So it's a 5-year fellowship that comes with 3 years of funding. You might ask, why a 5-year fellowship with 3 years of funding? It's very easy. We want you to be able to utilize the benefits when are most beneficial to you. Fellowships mean freedom. You have money to support yourself. You have money to take yourself away from it having to be a research assistant or teaching assistant, where you can focus on your research and your studies rather than how to balance office hours and lab commitments for someone else's research on top of doing your own studies and your own research. But most grad programs will come with some level of requirement of you need to work in a lab for X amount of time, or you need to teach for a year. A lot of PhD programs do carry that requirement. So this does allow you to say, hey, yeah, I'll work in a research lab for my first 2 years while I do coursework. And then when I start research, I'll go on funding, or what we call tenure. I'll go on tenure and receive my NSF funding so I can just focus on my research and writing my dissertation. Between you and your faculty mentor, you'll make that decision there. So for each of the 3 years of funding, you receive $37,000 a year, which is paid over monthly increments. You receive tuition coverage for those 3 years. The NSF does provide your institutions with $12,000 a year to cover tuition, and starting fall 24, it will be $16,000. But the reality is your institutions are providing a much higher level of tuition coverage because we're obligated to cover your tuition charges. So that means your tuition, your mandatory fees, your lab fees or program fees, material fees, your differentials. That's a really important one, especially for those of you in engineering programs that have hefty College of Engineering differential. So the tuition coverage does round out to be, especially if you're a non-resident, between $35,000 and $40,000 a year that you are benefiting from having waived. The NSF does provide career or life balance if you need family medical leave, such as you have a child or you're caring for a sick parent or sick child. You can get limited paid leave during your tenure. You do have access to other professional development opportunities, namely the NSF intern program, which can extend your fellowship even further and provide additional financial benefits such as travel and research costs. Then the GRFP, wherever you take that institution may provide you with additional benefits. Here at the University of Utah, I will cover your health insurance for your 3 years of tenure, and I will also provide you with $2,000 a year of research expense that you can use for research costs, travel costs, conferences, professional development. So over your entire fellowship, that's $6,000 of professional development and equipment that you get to utilize. A lot of PIs, a lot of faculty advisors will add to that $37,000, another $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000. So it is possible to walk away with a much more substantial benefits package than what the NSF themselves provide. There's some other important benefits here that are important to talk about. A lot of students will say to me, well, I just got admitted to my program and I get full funding. Well, that's great. You get full funding to work in a research lab, teach classes, but there's a few other things to take into consideration here. So firstly, this is a mobile award. You can take this to any United States institution, public or private, as long as they have a research-based master's or PhD program in your specific field. So that does leave a very wide and open field for you to take your funding with you wherever you choose to go. This does provide a step up in graduate admission. You know how this is. Graduate schools, they have this many seats, but they have this many super qualified applicants. And so not all the fantastic students who apply can get a seat in a program. We hear stories every day during GRFP season where a student was waitlisted or even rejected from a top program like MIT or Northwestern or Stanford, and they call up and say, hey, I just got the GRFP. I just wanted to let you know while you're looking at my record, and then, hey, you're admitted. That's not uncommon to get that step up in graduate admissions consideration. There is prestige and recognition surrounding this. It is definitely a unique thing. 10,000 or 10 million students in the United States, and 2,000 get the GRFP. So this does set you apart, and it is a sign of excellence in academia, excellence in research, excellence in leadership, and a high level of potential for the future. This does boost your resume, boost your CV, being able to say, I am a National Science Foundation fellow. That does carry a lot of cachet. And especially for those of you that are looking at careers in the academy, so going into research full-time, going into the professoriate to teach and conduct research and lead your own lab, if you're going to go into a government lab or run a nonprofit of any sort, what you're doing by applying for the fellowship establishes a pattern of seeking funding, external funding, and hopefully, fingers crossed, getting that funding. So the reality is, when you're on the job market, trying to get that tenure track job, you're going up against equally brilliant, equally as accomplished students. And it's going to come down to some more second layer considerations that kind of determine, are you the right person for the job or not? And a big part of that is going to be, you have experience seeking and getting external funding from places like the NSF, which means you have a higher chance of getting the NSF to fund your research lab. You're hired. That is a very, very real reality in the job market today. To be eligible, so jumping now to the eligibility of who can apply and receive the NSF GRFP, you must be a United States citizen, national, or permanent resident. I get calls from PIs and students every year saying, well, here's my special circumstance. I empathize. I wish I could make some changes, but this is federally set. And the NSF, if you were to call the NSF and speak to a program officer, calling me, calling the president of the university, we can make zero changes to that. So international and undocumented students, unfortunately, are not eligible for the GRFP. You must be enrolled or intend to enroll, so this is more for you, the intention to enroll in a research-based master's or doctoral program in an eligible STEM field. And those fields are, on a broader sense, chemistry, computer and information science and engineering, engineering at large, geoscience, life science, materials research, mathematical sciences, physics and astronomy, psychology, social science, and STEM education. I encourage you to look at the solicitation, which is part of the toolbox of resources that you'll be getting, a PDF of that solicitation, which outlines the entire competition for this fall, which is similar to what you'll see for every fall. There usually aren't a lot of huge changes, but you'll see in the appendix a breakdown of subfields that you will need to identify your research question with one of those subfields. So who isn't supported? Joint science and professional degree programs. So getting an MD, PhD, or JD, PhD is not allowable. The NSF wants you to be focusing on your research program and not diverting your focus with another program at that same time. You cannot be seeking a business administration or management degree, whether that itself, MBAs do not get the GRFP, or an MBA with a while pursuing your PhD. We have strict guidance from the NSF. If you are taking business classes as part of your PhD, that is allowable. But if you were to be enrolled in a PhD program or an MD program while pursuing your research degree, you would be forfeiting your fellowship. And there are some very strict rules to cut that fellowship off when you do enroll in and be accepted to a non-eligible degree program. Counseling and social work, mental health, and healthcare outside of biomedical health are not allowable. History, except for the history of science, and education, except for STEM education. And this is a really important differentiation that I want to make on STEM education. This is not, I'm getting a master's degree in like an MED to be a better chemistry teacher. Rather, it's I'm getting that PhD in studying STEM education to research how chemistry is taught. So there's that differentiation with STEM education. Research with disease-related goals. The only caveat to this is biomedical engineering, clinical research, patient-oriented research, epidemiological and medical behavioral studies, outcomes research, health services research, pharmacological, non-pharmacological, and behavioral intervention and studies are not eligible. The application has three primary components. We have transcripts, reference letters, and statements, and we're going to briefly go over each of these. Transcripts must be from each institution that you have ever attended, each post-secondary education institution that you've ever attended. You must list on your application all baccalaureate institutions and the graduate institutions that you have attended. You must submit all degree granting institutions transcripts, regardless of if you graduated or not. Let's say that you started your higher education journey at SLIC, and then you transferred after getting your associate degree, or even not associate degree, you just finished 2 years of school there, and you transferred to Utah Valley University. And you did a year there and then found University of Utah is better fit for me. So I'm going to transfer and finish my engineering degree at the University of Utah. Welcome to the U. You have to list all three schools, SLIC, UVU, and the University of Utah, and you must include transcripts from all of those, even though you've only graduated from one. If applying in the first semester at an institution where there's no transcript because you have no recorded grades, you must use an enrollment verification form, which both transcripts and enrollment verification forms are produced by the Office of the Registrar. Letters of reference. This is one of the most key parts of any fellowship application and really grad school application as well, and highly underrated by students. So it's really important to understand the importance of letters of reference, letters of recommendation. For the NSF GRFP, you may list and rank up to 5 reference writers. So you're able to say, here are 5 people, first, second, third, fourth, fifth choice. And the reason for this is you must have at least 2 letters of reference, and each reviewer can of your application can read up to 3. But why put in 5? Let's say first choice and second choice, life happened to them and they were not able to upload their letters in time, which happens, and unfortunately, no letters equals no review. That way you still have your third, fourth, fifth choice who uploaded their letters, and you will still get review of 3 letters in your application. So take advantage of that up to 5 reference writers. Minimum of 2, maximum of 3 will be part of your application consideration. These should be from faculty who know you, your research abilities and skills, and your scholarly history. If applying as a graduate student, which is not this population here, but if you choose to apply as a graduate student, your faculty advisor reference will be the most valuable recommendation that you have. If you are applying as a graduate student, especially as a second-year grad student, without your PI, your faculty advisor's recommendation, that is the biggest red flag on that application review. Industry recommendations are welcome, but it is very important to coach those recommend writers through what it is you're applying for so that they really understand. It's not so much to say, hey, John and Jane were great employees. They showed up on time. They did their job well. They were courteous to other employees. I would hire them again in a heartbeat. This is not an employment recommendation. They would say, yes, John worked in my lab. Jane supervised other lab technicians. They have lab research skills in X, Y, Z. And it's good to share your statements, which we'll go over in a second, the different statements, with your recommendation writers, both industry, faculty, and others, so that they understand what you're proposing, so they can corroborate those skills and experience as best as they are able to. Additionally, important to note, no family members may be your reference writers. So the first statement is your personal relevant background and future goal statement. So you're going to have 2 statements. One is about you, one is about your research. Personal statement is about you. This is a maximum of 3 pages, single space, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. Must address broader impacts and intellectual merit, each with their own unique header. And you'll see this in the solicitation as well as in the other materials that are being shared with you. This is your opportunity to talk about you, how you've prepared for graduate school and research, your professional and leadership goals post-doctorate. As I coach students through this, I say this, you talk about 3 specific areas of who you are, where you've been. So this is life leading up to college, where you are now, college, undergrad, and your grad school plans, and where you're going. And where you're going is not, hey, I want to be in grad school next year or in 2 years, and I want to be pursuing this PhD. No, that's part of where you are now. Where you're going is, what are the next 20 or 30 years looking like for you? This is the time to reflect on some questions to help you reflect on your background, such as what's unique, distinctive, or impressive about your individual story? What sets you apart from others? What details about you would help set you apart from others and help the reviewers get to know who you are? How did you become interested in science, in your particular field, in your finite area of research? What have you learned about it? What have you learned about yourself in that process? What have you learned about the field through classes, various readings and seminars and other work experiences or lab experiences, research experiences that you may have had? How have you capitalized on opportunities available to you? And if you've not had opportunities readily available for you, how have you gone about searching for those opportunities, whatever they may be? And what reasons can you get reviewers for being interested in you? You need to paint a picture. It's important to keep in mind the personal statement is talking about you. The NSF is looking to fund you as an individual who happens to be doing some research. They are not funding your PI. They're not funding your PI's research. So consider, why are you pursuing a graduate degree? Why are you studying science in your particular field? What are you most passionate about with science? Shares an outstanding research experience, even particularly one that's pivotal, that helped reframe science for you and reframe your path forward. And what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them? That's really important. The NSF wants to see how you face adversity. What challenges have come your way and what have you done to overcome that? Because the research process, no matter how smooth your PhD or master's research will be, you will hit roadblocks and you have to troubleshoot around that. They want to make sure that you have the resilience to do that. You want to hook your reader in. Don't say, I am writing to you about, or thank you for reading this essay. Don't do that. So some suggested hooks, these are just suggestions, you do you, but share a story of how you became interested in your area of science. Share unique research experience. Share why you're choosing to pursue a graduate degree and your specific research area. Talk about unique leadership or outreach experience relating to STEM or not relating to STEM, just a leadership experience that you've had. What in STEM you're passionate about and why, your broader impacts in the community, and your personal background that led you down this unique path. So these are just examples of some hooks that you might use in that first paragraph to draw your reader in. I've mentioned intellectual merits and broader impacts a few times. It's because it's important, and you know what they say about repetition. If you hear it more than once, it means it's super important. And you're going to see some matrix in the tools that have been shared with you, the PDFs. So I'm not going to go into this too deeply here, but intellectual merit and broader impacts is intellectual merit. It's the intellectual side, it's the scholarly side. Broader impact, this is how things impact your community. So with your personal statement, which is what we're chatting about right now, your intellectual merit is describe your ability, your motivation, your ability, your research experience. How are you trained as a scholar, essentially? And what goals do you have as a scholar, personally, as a scholar? And then broader impacts is describe your background, your personal story, how you've broadened participation in science, how you have been engaged in research. And this does not have to be STEM related. This can be, I am a regular volunteer at a nonprofit. I'm very passionate about literacy on top of science, and I go and help elementary school children learn how to read, whatever that may be, church experience, community experience, sociocultural experiences, what have you. Again, we've gone through this. So writing about your experience, describe the sorts of projects that you've worked on. Who was your research advisor, your faculty mentor, your PI? How did you get involved? Especially as an undergrad, you've not been accepted into a lab yet. As a graduate student, you don't have that finite, more narrowed path. So you are engaging in experiences like this, undergraduate research opportunities. What research experiences have you had, and how did you go about finding them? How were you connected with those experiences, and how did that turn out for you? What was your role in that research? Were you independent, or were you part of the team? What sort of skills and knowledge was gained from the experience? And what were the results? Did you have any publications, presentations, any sort of recognition? One thing that we find that students really struggle with is saying I. We want you to take ownership of your experience. And students will say, well, I just did this little thing in the lab. The lab did all of this, but I just did this little thing. That's great. You understand that you're part of a team, you're a cog in a larger machine. Describe that. What did you as a lab working on a certain experiment, what did you collectively achieve? But what was your role? You need to say, while we did X, I was in charge of Y and Z. No matter how big or small, take ownership and be proud of your contributions. That's super important to use I statements, not we. Page structure, you've got 3 pages, single space. A lot of people say, oh, 3 pages, oh, that's plenty of space. No, it is not. You will go through that so quickly, even though it is single space. And one question I get is that 3 physical pages front and back, i.e. 6 word pages? No, it is 3 pages, 3, not 6. So you talk about your relevant background, your present, what you're doing today, undergrad, getting into grad school, your goals for graduate school, and your future. What the next 20 to 30 years look like. And this is just a suggested structure in a way that makes sense for you and how your thematic narrative will go. But that said, if you go back and forth, you never want your reviewer to think. You want them to be able to just flow easily through your paper. You want it to be a good experience for them. And if they're having to go back and say, well, wait a minute, why are we talking about this? Let's go back. Did they reference this before? I don't see the connection. That's not good. So start by telling a story, what your hook is. Go into your relevant background and talk about your intellectual merits, your research experience. Then you'll go into broader impacts. And then on your 3rd page, your preparedness to plan and conduct research and your future goals. This could be a starting point, and you may change this up to whatever works for you. Now diving into the other important part of the statements, the research plan statement. This is where instead of talking about you, you're talking about your research idea. And even though you are undergrads, you have an idea of what you want, or you will need to have an idea of what you want to study. What's that research experiment that you're super interested in? As NSF applicants, you will be evaluated in one of 3 tiers. And as I'm speaking to you as undergrads, I highly suggest and recommend that you apply as a rising senior. Application portals open in August and close in October. So that would be October of your senior year, provided you're planning to go to grad school the year after that. Because you can apply as a rising senior and only once as a grad student. So you want to use the rising senior chance as well. So you're evaluated as rising seniors, 1st year grad students, and 2nd year grad students. So you're not going to be compared as a rising senior, your research idea, to a 2nd year grad student. You will not be compared one against the other. You'll be in a pool of other rising seniors. So your research idea will not be as fleshed out and as more finitely articulated as a 2nd year grad student was, but you still need to have a good idea of what you're trying to accomplish. And your faculty mentor, your research mentor, whatever your faculty mentor or guide or advisor is at this stage of your education will be really key in helping you through that. So back to the mechanics. This is maximum of 2 pages. Single spaced, 1-inch margins, 12-point font, the standard deal there. Must address broader impacts and intellectual merit under their unique header. So same as on the personal statement, you must have a section with a little bolded header that says intellectual merit and broader impacts. No headers, no review. this is your opportunity to talk about who you are and how you've prepared for grad school research. Okay, so take time to reflect on what is my research question, and why is it important? Okay. What is my proposed research project and how will it answer the question? Okay. What do I hope to achieve with my research? What are my expected outcomes? So you have a hypothesis. You want to conduct research to answer a question, but you've got an idea of, it could go in this direction or this direction. What are your initial thoughts on what that is? What is necessary for me to conduct this project? What resources do you need? What skills do you need? You need PI support. Is there financial or travel? Do you need to go travel across the world to collect data or conduct research? A few things to think about there. And how have I prepared to execute this project? Or really importantly, what preparation lies ahead of me? So you're going to identify what some of your weaknesses are, and you're going to talk about how you're going to address them. For example, especially at this stage, you might say, well, I'm going to need to learn coding. Okay, that's a skill that I don't have that I recognize I need. But then as I look at grad programs, because I'm applying as a senior, as I look at grad programs, this will be something that I will address in that first year of school. So it can be as simple as that. What's your research question and the problem that you're aiming to solve? What is the problem? Why is this important? What's the need for that research? Why is this still a problem? Great question to talk with your faculty mentor about. What's wrong with the existing solutions and how will your approach be different? So you're very likely going to be examining a question that other researchers are looking at. But you're not going to conduct research the same way they did to come up with flawed solutions or incorrect solutions or failed research. Instead, you are going to have a different approach that you're aiming to be the successful solution. Why is your approach different? Why is it better? Why is it more ideal? And what do you expect to achieve in addressing your research question? So you're able to answer the question. You're able to say, yes, now we know definitively based on the research, X, Y, or Z. But what does X, Y, or Z mean more broadly to science, to research, to your area of study? What does it mean to your community? What does it mean to society? Consider taking action. Your research question, what are you going to do to address the problem? What are the necessary steps to take? Coding, experiments, field research, data analysis. Be specific, but avoid minutia. So talk about each step, but also remember what is important to include or what not include. Faculty mentor can be very helpful here. And what is your timeline? Good to have a timeline. Is it reasonable for a PhD student? And what is required for your program? So two pieces there. What is required for your program and such? Your faculty mentor should really be addressing that in their letter of reference. But is this reasonable for a PhD student to be doing? I remember when I was first at the, beginning to look at research questions for my dissertation. And I proposed what I thought was a very basic question that was reasonable for a doctoral dissertation project. And I presented that in my group, and my PI turned around and said, no, Matthew, that is a 10-year and at least $5 million project. That is not appropriate. You need to scale that way down. So that's something that you need to look at here. What is the scalability of this, and is it appropriate? Who are your reviewers? Your reviewers are faculty. They're not going to be faculty in your specific finite area, but they are going to be experienced teachers and researchers in STEM. And so they're going to read a research plan and they will say, this feels very reasonable, or, ooh, this person is really playing optimistic and this will not happen because I've seen this happen time and time again, and this is not realistic. So they will see through things. So you want to be as honest and pragmatic as possible in that timeline. Skills and tools. What is necessary for your proposed project? If you do not have those skills, how are you addressing this? And this can be done in a couple of ways. You might be engaging in classes or professional development to fill that gap and upskill your portfolio of what you bring to your research, or you might be collaborating. Or this might be an issue of you will be supervised by your faculty advisor, by your PI, and that will be sufficient for your needs. What sort of resources are needed? Do you need equipment, special lab access to, or access to collaborators, travel? Is there a cost to this? How will that cost be addressed? Do you have access to the tools and resources needed? And if not, how will you gain that access? And then again, costs. What costs are associated, if any, and how will you address that? Research risks. Reviewers want you to acknowledge that there's research risk. Okay, the pandemic taught us a lot about this. When lockdown started happening, we had researchers all over the world, students working on their PhD projects all over the world, having to come back and go back to the drawing board of, okay, I can't do my field research in South America. How can I pivot my research, my data collection to still execute this research project? So it's always important to have that plan B, and the pandemic taught us maybe a plan C and plan D might be good there as well. A good example I have of this recently is I was advising a student who, an anthropology student who was going to be doing research of ancient African dental records. And she had a relationship with an Egyptian government agency, an archaeological agency. And she has been collaborating with the researchers, and she has been invited to go and participate in the digs and to do the direct experimentation on the dental records from 10,000 years ago. And, but what if, I said, what if lockdown happens again? What if international relations go in a different direction and the United States closes access of citizens to Egypt, or Egypt shuts their doors? Or what if those researchers at that agency are no longer there? Or what if funding gets cut and that agency has to shut down? What will you do then? And she said, well, there's some already completed data that would be fine. I would like to do the original dig myself. That's going to be a higher quality to my project and the results, but this can be conducted with existing data that I will have access to. So that was her plan B that she could easily do under lockdown or any of those other scenarios. So you need to think about that. What's that plan B? If you don't talk about, I acknowledge there's a risk in this, and here's how I will troubleshoot should that actually happen, that's not going to bode well. So acknowledge the risk and talk about that plan B. Relationships. What relationship is necessary for you to conduct your research and be successful in that? Do you have an appropriate PI or faculty mentor? You are undergrads. You may have started looking at grad schools, you might not have. You might be talking to some potential faculty advisors whose labs you might be enrolled into, you might not be. So this is your chance to still talk about that, but in maybe more aspirational. Here's what I'm looking for, or I'm currently looking at different grad programs, and here's the profile of the faculty that I'm talking to and working with, and here's their background and how their background will be really helpful in conducting this research and supervising my research. Do you require relationships with individuals or organizations outside of your graduate college or university? A national lab, researchers at another institution, a field test site or community organization? Have you started honing those relationships? Other necessary connections that you might have, talk about that. Again, you've got 2 pages to talk very succinctly about all of this. Keep in mind who your audience is. Not necessarily just who's reading your paper, but who will benefit from your research directly and indirectly, and who should and will be interested in your results. Know who your reviewers are. Yes, generally, you will not know them individually. And then who are the other constituents of your research? The scientific community. Who in the scientific community? Government labs, community organizations, policymakers. Who is going to care about your results, and why are your results important to those scientific community and broader society constituents? Communicating those results. How will you be taking those results and communicating that to that audience? Will you do you plan to publish? If so, what journals do you believe will be ideal for your research to be published in? Being able to list, X journal, Y journal, and Z journal are ideal for this research. That's going to carry a little bit more cachet than, yeah, we'll put out a journal article. Will you share your results at conferences, posters, panel presentations, what have you? What conferences would be of interest for you to share those results where the members and the attendees would be interested in those results? Name those organizations. And what other efforts might you be taking to communicate your results? How will you be talking to broader society about this? What sort of communication channels will you be working with a local health department, with a governor's office on economic development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What is the return on investment? So the GRFP, the project, what benefit will this provide for you? So will this provide you a stepping stone in academia? How? Will you be learning new marketable skills through this process of your graduate education and this project? Will this be a foot in the door at a national lab or a government or nonprofit agency? What other benefits might you have for this? And then again, intellectual merits, broader impacts, a much more qualitative matrix is being shared with you. Intellectual merits of your research project. What is the value of this project to your discipline and greater academia? What is remarkable about it? What is your contribution to existing science? And what is innovative about your approach? The broader impacts was the importance of your research to broader society and the relevance to society. And society can be everyone, or it might be specific communities. It might be like, let's say that you're doing your research for something with the Greater Salt Lake, because that is a very timely and concerning issue right now for Utahns, is the drying out of the Great Salt Lake. So if your research is with the Great Salt Lake, who in broader society is going to be impacted? Well, there's the population on the Wasatch Front. That's an important one. Economically, that's going to be a big game changer with us in one direction or another, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are those different pockets of society that will be impacted? Are there interdisciplinary connections of your research? Are you a biologist and your results are going to be very, very helpful for engineers or physicists? What sort of outreach will you engage with? What sort of leadership role will you have with your research, or will that provide you with? And can you and how can you quantify your impact? How are you evaluating your impactfulness here? Okay, here is a suggested page structure. Again, this is just a suggested page structure. Do what is going to be best for your narrative. So introduce your research idea, briefly mention the intellectual merit and broader impact, then go directly into your research plan. Your objective, your preparation, your approach, your methods. You do need to talk about methods. Your data variables and how the data will be collected and analyzed, your expected outcomes, your timeline. On page 2, discuss the practicalities. What are the risks, the sensitivities, and the contingencies that you have in place? Describe in this space your plan B in case a vulnerable element is not of your research isn't possible. Then you'll dive in under a specific header, your intellectual merit, and under another specific header, your broader impact. Then you'll conclude, and then you'll have some citations, if any citations are welcome, not required. And you do not get an additional page for sources reference. You must fit that on the whole 2 pages here. So introducing your plan, you need a hook. Don't say, I want to research X because Y. Draw us in, make us interested. So what are you hoping to solve with your project? What's the question you're answering? What is innovative about your project? What's your innovative approach? What's the problem left unsolved that you're hoping to solve? And why have other efforts not been successful? And what broader impact are you hoping your project will have? These are just a few examples of a hook to draw your reader in. So outline your plan, your introduction, the who, what, where, when, how, and why. Discuss the risks, the practicalities, intellectual merit, broader impact, conclusion, strategic repetition. Repeat, draw connections between this and your personal statement. Think about what you want to your reader to walk away with, and make sure you're using strategic repetition. Some writing tips for these two different statements. Be pithy and succinct, only include what is necessary. You got a total of 5 pages. 3 pages for the personal statement, 2 pages for the research plan. That will go by very quickly. Omit unnecessary language, especially technical jargon. Don't use technical jargon. A lot of times we see students putting as much technical talk in there as much as possible because they feel like I have to do that to sound like I know what I'm talking about. But my advice to students is, if your creative writing English major roommate or your piano performance sister can understand what you're trying to accomplish, they might not understand the methodology and the data analysis or whatnot, but they understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. That's a good win. A good sign of a good researcher is being able to take a technical concept and describe it in a way that someone on the elevator can understand. So take out that technical jargon as much as possible. Remember, if you are studying quantum physics, you will not have a quantum physicist reviewing your paper. You're more likely to have a chemist reviewing your application. So don't use quantum physics specific language there, because the chemist will not they will not know what you're talking about, and chances are they're not going to open up Google or a dictionary to do a little research. Because remember, I'd like to frame this with faculty as reviewers. Think about your faculty member's life. They get up in the morning, they get their family ready for the day. They have an 8 o'clock lecture class with 100 students, 100 undergrads, that half of them are falling asleep. And that then means 100 papers that they're going to have to review. They have office hours to go over last week's tests, and students complaining about that. It's a little grinding on you. Then they've got committee meetings, and then they've got their kids' swimming lessons and ballet lessons. And then they get home and they're settling in for the day, cooking dinner, washing dishes. And just as they're going through a mountain of laundry and getting ready for bed, they realize, I have to review 10 essays for fellowships before 6 o'clock in the morning. That's just in general. Add the NSF timeline to this. They're doing this over winter vacation. And a number of reviewers say, it's really challenging because we're locking ourselves up in our home office trying to go through these, while our kids on Christmas vacation are saying, Mom, Dad, come sledding with us, come make a snowman with us. And they're like, no, I have to finish this first. So you don't want your paper to be a painful experience for them. Make it as easy as possible. Okay, so make sure each sentence is purposeful. Use effective repetition, past research experience, research skills, whatever it is you're really trying to get them to walk away with when it comes to remembering who you are. Originality is key. You need to weave into your narrative a statement of originality, how your project is innovative and different than what has been done. The originality of your project, as illustrated in your research statement, should be corroborated by your PI or other references in their letters of recommendation. Talk about what is different. Are you utilizing cutting-edge science and technology? Projects should not be incremental. When talking about your project, don't say, we've always done this, or but I'm changing this one variable. Rather, be innovative, step outside of the box, and describe your approach as something brand new. Illustrate your originality, but it cannot be your PI's idea. And they will be asked to confirm this, that you are not just doing their research. It has to be your research. What are you really showing? You're proposing a project, but you will not be locked into completing that project. That's a big question that we constantly get is, oh, what if I propose something and I don't really follow that down to the letter? There's no NSF police. They're not going to come and wave a badge with a siren going and say, hey, you proposed this, but you did something different. Give us back the fellowship. That will never happen, I assure you. They understand that life happens, changes happen. But rather, your proposal is illustrating that you're capable of determining original research and conducting scalable and feasible research projects, crafting an innovative and cutting-edge project proposal, and considering risks and other important considerations to be a skilled, talented, and successful researcher. That's really what you're showing here. So show your acumen for this level of research. Be confident in yourself. The NSF is funding you and your research, but primarily you, who's going to conduct the research, and you who will be the leader, not your PI's lab, though they may be providing you with some support. Take ownership of your scholarly and research path and career goals. Be honest about your preparation and acknowledge what needs to still happen. Talk about that gap and those vulnerabilities and how you're going to address that. Talk about your research history and how that supports this research project, and let your passion for the discipline and your project show. You're all looking at research and potentially going to grad school. That means you're really interested in something. Show that interest. Let us get excited by your excitement. Images are allowed, but they must fit into your 2-page maximum on your research statement. NSF recommends that you use images for equations rather than typing out various symbols that can get muckied up in the upload process if you try typing that out. So use images for your equations. Images, including graphs and figures, do take up valuable real estate. So ask yourself, is it more purposeful to have this image here, or is it more purposeful for me to describe this in the narrative? When and where possible, use your own images, and images should not be too complicated to understand. References are allowed, but they must fit into your 2 or 3 page maximum for whichever statement. Use sparingly. Select the important, impactful, and respected publications that will really highlight, oh, the journal of, okay, they're drawing from that's good to know. That's what the reaction you don't want. What is that obscure? Is that a real journal? You don't want them asking that question. This is an opportunity to highlight your research as well as that of those who are informing your research. So the researchers who would show up in your lit review. And reminder, your paper will not be reviewed by a professor or researcher in your core discipline. So to get started, start with an outline and just kind of map this out. The Writing Center is a great resource to help you do this. Word processing software, spelling and grammar checks are not always accurate. So proofread, have multiple people proofread. Speaking of proofreading and seeking feedback, identify multiple proofreader partners, your faculty mentor, classmates in your discipline, other grad students in your area of study, friends, roommates. You want people in STEM and outside of STEM. Spelling and grammar feedback is important and valuable, but feedback on your writing and narrative is good focal point for proofreaders. Ask proofreaders to provide feedback on the flow of your paper, how your research is articulated, and if they can walk away with a decent understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. Go through several rounds of proofreading and editing. Some of my most successful applicants go through 15 to 20 rounds of edits. What can you do now as an undergrad? Continue working on any research projects that you're working on and continue seeking those opportunities like you are right now through the Office of Undergraduate Research. Identify potential reference writers, keep that in mind, and have conversations. Never put someone down as a reference without talking to them about it first, talking about discussing with them what you're hoping that they will reflect in their letter, and them saying yes. If a faculty member or anyone else says no, don't push it, just walk away, go to the next person on the list. Letters of recommendation are political and can be very sensitive. So if someone says they do not feel comfortable, that is a sign saying, I don't think I can speak honestly to what you think I should be speaking, and I will not be a successful voice in your consideration. So leave it at that and move on. Don't ruin a relationship over someone saying no to a reference. Articulate your grad school plan. You don't have to be accepted into a program yet, but you do need to speak to your educational interests and opportunities. If you're looking at certain programs, talk about that. You might not be to that point of applying yet, but talk about the type of program, why that school, is there a particular researcher there that you want to work in their lab, what have you. Read the 2023 solicitation. It was just released 2 days ago, and it is in your toolbox of resources. Make a plan between today and the October deadline when you will be completing and submitting. Identify your strengths and weaknesses and consider how you'll frame that. Move on any ongoing research projects you have, finish any pending articles, thematically organize your statement outlines, and begin drafting statements early. Some of you may be applying this fall, some of you may be applying next fall or in 2 years from now. So these are things that you can think about just ongoing. What is the experience I have? What are the skills that I need, and how can I seek that out, etc. Now, some FAQs, some frequently asked questions that we may have covered some of this already, so we'll go quickly, lightning round fashion. And so some of these may hopefully answer your questions. Of course, I'm happy to take your questions afterward. How many drafts of my statements should I go through? I recommend minimum of 10. Some of my most successful applicants have gone through more than 20 rounds of edits. There's always more room to perfect. So there's a point where you say good enough is good enough. In doctoral education, we have a saying, what is a good dissertation? A good dissertation is a done dissertation, because you can spend the next 30 years reframing and rewriting and perfecting it. But you have to call it a day at some point. So always keep that in mind. How important is my faculty advisor, my research statement? Your advisor is key. They will attest to the originality of your project and confirming that you will have the support necessary to complete that project. This is particularly key for second-year grad student applicants. First-year grad students and rising seniors, your reviewers understand that you might not have a significant relationship with a faculty advisor yet, or even have a faculty advisor for grad school. In those cases, other recommendation writers will be key on this. Should I have anyone other than my faculty advisor or PI review my research plan? Yes, 100%, absolutely you should. You want to have a diversity of perspectives, so people in STEM and non-STEM. Non-STEM proofreaders can be valuable in gauging how well your statement is written. While they might not understand the details, they should be able to walk away with an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. And if they're confused, you want to reframe. My PI is conducting research that is fascinating, and I want to continue it in a new direction. Is that allowed? This really does depend. NSF does not want you to utilize the GRFP to fund and service your PI's research. They're funding you and your research, and there has to be that originality to that. However, if you're continuing your PI's research agenda, that's not allowable. But your PI, you're working in their lab because you're interested in their research. And they are probably publishing, and their published articles are probably going to be showing up in your lit review and informing the direction of your research. So you might be taking your PI's research and branching it off in an original direction that they are not. That is where things start becoming allowable. But you do need to make those distinctions, and the PI needs to make that distinction as well. The personal statement limit is 3 pages. Does this include sources, or can I have another page? No, everything must fit into that maximum of 3 pages. No appendices, no additional images, no additional page for bibliography. Can I use images? Yes, and in some cases encouraged, such as with equations. But keep in mind, images do take a valuable real estate. A few of my proofreading partners aren't scientists or professors. Should I take their advice on how I talk about my research? 100% absolutely. Hopefully they're not saying, well, this is not a good data analysis methodology. That's more for your STEM feedback, and definitely more for your faculty advisor or your faculty mentor to give you that advice on. But they need to be able to understand what you're talking about. And if they can't, you need to reframe. How many times can I apply? You apply as a rising senior, and then you can apply once as a grad student, either your first year or your second year. And you really do need to make sure that you're doing it at the appropriate time. There are times where we do turn around and say to students, it's probably going to be better for you to apply as a second year grad student rather than first, because if you bomb that your first, you can't apply again. And we see a lot of students applying as first years because they see dollar signs. I need to hurry and find a way. But they're going to be a lot more successful if they get that year of research in their PI's lab. They have a really strengthened relationship with their PI. They're going to be much stronger as a second year and much more likely to get the award. I'm graduating soon with my bachelor's degree, but I plan to take a year off. Will the NSF allow me to defer the award? Generally speaking, no, you cannot defer your award. The only exception to this is if it is for medical or military, and your institution has to defer your admission. So those are the only cases that the NSF will defer. And let's say you're here at the University of Utah. University of Utah has to say, we will also defer your admission also. As I look forward to graduate school, I'd like to concurrently enroll and earn an MBA or another professional degree. Is that allowable? No, very simply, it is not. You might need to take a management class as part of your research. That might be one of the upskilling opportunities that you need to lead a project. But if you are earning an MBA, you will lose your GRFP. That is something to take into consideration there. I'm planning to complete my master's at one school and my PhD at another. What will happen to my funding? Provided that all schools meet the requirements, that they are United States and you are in an eligible research-based graduate program here in the United States, you can take your funding with you. That's the beauty of the GRFP. It is mobile. It is your funding, not your funding at the University of Utah. Fellows should feel empowered to use their fellowship funding and support to make educational decisions, and that includes being at the right program for you. I have students who transfer in with their GRFP mid-PhD from other schools because the University of Utah will have a PI that's much more familiar in that niche area of research and are going to be better at that, or students are not being treated well at their other PhD programs and they want to go somewhere else where they will be able to really get through their program successfully and on time, or for a myriad of reasons. So you can mid-program or finishing a master's and going into a PhD, you can switch the schools that you attend. Not a problem at all. Are there citizenship requirements? Again, yes, you must be a United States citizen, permanent resident, or national. This is non-negotiable, unfortunately. Can I apply for the GRFP if I'm planning to attend a foreign institution? You must be attending a United States institution to utilize the GRFP. Here's the caveat, and it's an important one for you. This does not mean that you cannot conduct research in a foreign country. This does not mean that you cannot be collaborating with faculty at another and researchers at another university. I have one student, GRFP student, who is doing research in Denmark. She is enrolling here at the University of Utah. She's earning credit here at the University of Utah, but she is spending a semester doing data collection and collaborating with researchers at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark. 100% allowable. She's still getting her stipend and all the other benefits of the GRFP. I'm applying as an undergrad and I'm not sure where I'll be attending grad school next year. Will this be a problem? No. NSF understands that when you're applying as a rising senior, that your plans might not be settled and they are in progress. This is your opportunity to talk about what you are seeking, what you are looking for, and maybe even list, I'm looking at these 3 programs. List those and say why. I'm not planning to attend an Ivy League or elite university. Will I have a chance? This is a big, big question in the fellowship community because there are some funding agencies, private funding agencies and foundations that are trending more towards, oh, if you're not coming from a top 10 or an Ivy League, should we even apply? NSF is not one of those. The results are public every year. You can download a spreadsheet of all of the awardees and all of the honorable mentions. It says their baccalaureate institution and their current institution, and you will see state schools, teaching universities, minority serving institutions, not just top 10 public institutions, not just Ivy League or elite East Coast schools. I did have a discussion with an NSF program officer about this. Here's her response. The reason that we see schools like MIT and Harvard or whatever elite school that you want to name getting more NSF GRFP awards than schools like the University of Utah or Utah State University comes down to one factor, she said. These students are required in their classes to apply for a fellowship. So more applications leads to more awards. So that was her advice for University of Utah. More awards, you need more applications. That's really the only difference between underperforming as far as award distribution goes. So do you have a chance? You 100% have a chance. And the NSF does look particularly at students who are diverse, who come from minority serving institutions or going to minority serving institutions, or who come from EBSCOR territories, which you can look at the NSF's website of what EBSCOR territories are. This is where they're trying to invigorate a higher level of scientific research. So for example, I grew up in Idaho. I went to undergrad in Idaho, and that is an EBSCOR jurisdiction. So I would talk about how growing up in Idaho and going to school in Idaho may have impacted my access to STEM education and whatnot. I've worked on papers not ready for publication. Will this be a problem? Will be a problem if I don't have publications. Having publications is hugely helpful for your application, and if you are able to move them along, that's great. If you are under peer review right now, talk about that. If you're doing edits for final review pre-publication, talk about that. If you have a scheduled publication date, mention that. Mention the journal's name. But if you're working on papers and you've not yet submitted that, feel free to mention that too, and what your aspirations are with those papers and those publications. You can easily, or I shouldn't say easily, nothing with the GRFP is easy. You can absolutely 100% possibly get a GRFP without any publications. That is not a requirement, and hundreds of students get the GRFP without publications. So don't let that hold you back. You do have to have research experience. You cannot apply to GRFP without research experience and expect to get the award, because you will not. So prioritize getting more and more research experience. I'm an undergraduate and I've worked in a research lab outside my program. Can that PI write a letter of recommendation? Absolutely. You want your recommendation writers to be familiar with you as a student, as a scholar, as a researcher. And so if you're working in a lab that just happens to be outside of your program or your area of study, they're still able to speak to your research skills. And that's going to be super, super valuable, especially as an undergrad applying. When does the application portal open? The portal opens early in August. When are applications due? Between the 16th and the 20th. This depends on your discipline. Chemistry will be due one day, engineering will be due another day, etc. So you want to look at the solicitation, find when your date is, and maybe plan to upload a week earlier. Every year, there's always a student somewhere that the Wi-Fi goes out, they didn't expect it to, a family emergency happens, and what have you. And even all the way up to college presidents will reach out to the NSF, say, hey, extenuating circumstance, can you make this work? NSF's answer is no. So we never think we're going to have upload problems. We never think we're going to have Wi-Fi problems, but we do. So schedule a week early. And when will applicants be notified of the results? This will be the first week of April. You will be notified by email, and this will be done publicly as well. Some resources for you. Look at the solicitation, look at the website. There's a lot of great resources on the NSF website. Previous workshops, tools, and resources, including a lot of what I've shared with you today, are on the Use NSF GRFP website, nsf-grfp.utah.edu. Your faculty mentor or mentors. As undergrad students, you might not have one particular mentor, but a group of faculty that you've taken classes with or done research with that you trust and you work with. The Writing Center is highly underutilized with grad students or those preparing for grad school. They are a great resource, especially when starting out and writing your narrative, how to structure your paper and get starting with the outline. And graduate fellowship advising, that's me. I'm the graduate advisor here at the University of Utah. Fellowships at gradschool.utah.edu. Reach out to me. Happy to meet with you one-on-one. The toolbox I have for you that has been shared with you, copy of this presentation, copy of the solicitation, as a suggested timeline, personal statement advice, research plan, broader impacts and intellectual merit matrix, personal statement, broader impacts and intellectual merit matrix, and personal history inventory worksheet to help you generate ideas and what to talk about in your personal statement. And with that, any questions you have, I'm happy to answer, and always feel free to reach out to me, fellowships@gradschool.utah.edu, or stop and see me here in the Park building. Okay. And I see that we do have some questions here. If you take a gap year after undergrad, can you apply during that gap year? Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's not a problem at all. What if you plan on taking a break to do a post-baccalaureate? Can you still get the 2 attempts to apply, or should you still do it as a rising senior? Um, in situations like that, I would really suggest talking with your faculty mentor over why you would be doing a post-bac instead of going directly into grad school, and really weigh the pros and cons of what is most beneficial to you. If you, what I see some students do is they'll apply as a rising senior. If they don't get it, then they'll have a post-baccalaureate experience of whatever that is, and then they will get into grad school and apply as a grad student, and that's fine. Your post-baccalaureate, if that includes taking university classes, keep in mind that if you enroll in a degree-seeking program that you are labeling as your post-baccalaureate experience, that can hinder your ability to apply for the GRFP as a first or second year grad student. Reach out to me or the coordinating official on your campus to talk through those specifics. Okay, and I see we've gone way over time. Is there any benefit to submitting as soon as the application opens via versus waiting until the end? Not really. You will nothing will be reviewed until the cutoff date. So I would say take the time. Don't be eager to hit submit. Give yourself the benefit of the extra time for more proofreading and peer review and such. And last question in the box, are you aware of any fellowship funding opportunities for those whose research is clinically or disease focused? The NIH is probably going to be a really good opportunity there, but I would say speak with your faculty mentor first on what is standard in your area. Pharmacological or pharmacy adjacent might be the Pharma Foundation. There's the NIH. NASA sometimes does health related as well, because NASA is sky and on land. And there might be some other NSF opportunities there as well. Depends on what your research is and your core discipline. Okay, so unless there are other questions, Shelley, it's back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Plooster. This has had a ton of information, and I'm sure everyone will find it very useful. I just want to remind everybody about the evaluation form. This is the QR code, and I will put the link in the chat, and the recording of this will be on our website next week, but I already have all the toolbox resources on the website. So thank you again, Dr. Plooster. We appreciate it.